Welcome to Pure Nonfiction, the podcast interviewing documentary filmmakers. I'm Tom Powers, the documentary programmer for the Toronto International Film Festival and artistic director of the Doc NYC Festival. On this episode, we hear from director Rachel Lears and editor Robin Blotnick about their new documentary, Knock Down the House. We first told you about the film in January on our preview of Sundance, where the film had its world premiere. Knock Down the House follows 4 Democratic candidates running insurgent campaigns for Congress in 2018. They're based throughout the country, in Missouri, Nevada, West Virginia, and New York City.
We're running to organize. We're running to redefine the political landscape in New York City. And here's the best part about all of this. We're not running to make a statement. We're not running to pressure the incumbent to the left. We're running to win.
One of those candidates is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez from the Bronx. The filming began when she was still a bartender, and her primary campaign against the Democratic incumbent Joe Crowley seemed like the longest of long shots. For Knock Down the House, Rachel's the director and cinematographer. Her husband, Robin, is the editor. If you wonder how they had the foresight to follow AOC so early, look at their previous film, The Hand That Feeds. That film, set in a Manhattan deli, follows immigrant workers trying to organize a union. Rachel and Robin clearly have instincts for grassroots movements and great storytelling skills. The Hand That Feeds won the audience prize at the 2014 Doc NYC Festival. 2 years later, Rachel and Robin were new parents and feeling stunned on election night.
So let me say, it is my high honor and distinct privilege to introduce to you the President-elect of the United States of America, Donald Trump.
Rachel describes how that night got them started on Knock Down the House.
The project started in the fall of 2016, actually the day after the presidential election. And I wanted to find, sort of between projects, wanted to find a story that would be hopeful, a story that would be big and national in scope, about people from different parts of the country and different backgrounds coming together to put forward a positive vision for moving the country forward and building a better society, a more equitable society. So through that idea, I came in contact with the organizations Brand New Congress and Justice Democrats, who were recruiting ordinary working people to run for Congress and really working on building a pathway to the halls of power for people who wouldn't ordinarily have a chance to get there. Nurses, teachers, bartenders. And through those organizations, I met the 4 incredible women who are featured in the film. And it's thrilling to be able to share their stories with you. You'll see that it's a story about power, about what it takes to build power in yourself and in the world, and what it takes and what it looks like to make the politically impossible possible.
Rachel made those remarks last week as she introduced a screening at the IFC Center. After the film, Rachel and Robin took the stage for a live conversation led by Doc NYC senior programmer Karen McMullen.
Okay, so you were saying in your intro that the day you decided to make this film the day after Trump was elected. Most of us were in a fetal position somewhere, and you decided to get up and make a film.
So was
I. Can you talk about that decision? What motivated you to do that, and where did you find the strength and the energy to do that?
Well, I made a list. I made a document. Called it "What Is to Be Done," and I made a list of things that I wanted to get involved in politically and the types of stories that I wanted to tell in this new political reality that we were facing, and I realized that Brand New Congress was on the Get Involved In list, and then I realized, wait, this actually encompasses all the sorts of stories that I want to tell about people, about building solidarity across the country, across social divides, and people coming together to create big change in American government. So that was kind of the genesis of that. It's just, got to believe in something.
And to pile on the crazy ideas, you had an 8-month-old. You and your husband had an 8-month-old boy, and you decided to go into production on a documentary.
that was part of it. It was really like, I always felt like I had to believe in something. I've got this little kid. I can't just assume that everything's gonna be terrible now. You have to. Gotta do something. So that was part of the motivation for me, for sure.
How did you handle the child rearing, the child care during production?
It was a challenge. It never ceases to be a challenge.
Would you do it over again? That's a question for you.
Yes, I would. I don't know about you, but so we. Well, we had this little kid. He's 3 now. He has the credit of best boy in the film. I don't know if you noticed. But so we traveled around the country with him as a family producing this film. Of course, we had a very shoestring budget at the time. We were, in the beginning, before we had any external funding, we were, doing everything between freelance projects so I did most of the shooting, and Robin did all the editing, and it was really this lean, mean, mom and pop doc machine. Would you do it over again, Robin? I don't know.
It's starting to get kind of beautiful in memory. It's a sort of nostalgic thing. It was definitely an adventure, especially I think like West Virginia, where we were driving back and forth across West Virginia over and over with this kid, and making him meals in the microwaves of motels every night. But I think he enjoyed it quite a bit. He loved Paula Jean especially.
So how did you go about picking your 4 very dynamic characters, and what made you decide to only choose women?
Well, the original concept for the film was more about political outsiders and what ordinary working people as first-time candidates would experience in that process. But as 2017 went on, pretty soon it became clear that there was this historic wave of women running in the midterms, and it felt like a natural fit to narrow it down in that way. And we were working with these organizations and limiting the field of possible candidate characters to them. They were all going to be refusing corporate donations and running on this unified slate, supporting each other across the country. So within that, we wanted to find people who would have, really strong personalities and really charismatic presence on film, because we didn't know what was going to happen with the elections, and the purpose was also not to make a typical campaign how-to film. We wanted to find people who had very personal reasons for doing what they were doing, and very deep personal experience to draw on in that process, knowing that would be better for film as well. So I think we both just gravitated towards, I interviewed a couple dozen candidates, met with a bunch of them, and really gravitated towards these 4, and the film really kind of coalesced around these 4.
We knew it was the zeitgeist of the moment, but it was convenient for us that they were also just our 4 most, our favorite characters to follow, male or female. So it just worked out that way.
Plus, we had to make sure their primaries weren't on the same day, so we could, because we were just one crew.
So it was a very kind of iconic, classic David versus Goliath story, the underdog besting the powerful. And it was kind of, I guess, a happy accident that Alexandria won. What do you think, your film might have looked like had she not?
Well, we thought about that a lot during the process. It was definitely a very real possibility that all 4 of them would lose, and we knew that going in. So, we also chose candidates that were confronting political machines, and we were very interested in exploring those dynamics of power and what power looks like in this country, in different parts of the country. And so I think we felt like it would be sort of like a street fight on the national level. You know, it can still be a really interesting story if you've got compelling characters, even if they don't win the election. Especially if you can, through that personal story, also reveal larger dynamics about how the political system works.
I'm not a political junkie, and I found the film really informative. I didn't understand, how difficult it is for the as she says, the down ballot candidates to rise up in the ranks, and that this political machine is meant to, or it's designed to kind of suppress democracy. That was really eye-opening and rather upsetting. What did you learn about the political process that was a surprise to you?
Wow, I mean, I had no idea how undemocratic the electoral process is here in New York. So there's just all these things about it. I mean, as you saw, it's really difficult to get on the ballot in the first place in New York City. That the webs of powerful elected officials tend to support one another, and people are handpicked to be the successor, this one, the successor of that one, et cetera. And there's also all these things that make it hard for people to vote. So, you had to register. We didn't even have the space to go into it in the film, but to vote in the Democratic primary, as some of you know, if you vote in primaries, you have to register almost a year ahead of time. In that party, you can't change your registration from independent to Democratic a month before the election. And because you decide you want to vote in the Democratic primary, so there's just all these things. They also have several different election days. So if you voted last year, you probably remember that this was in June, and then in September there was a state primary, and there was also we live upstate in the Hudson Valley. There was a school board election in May, and it's like, why are there so? And then there's the general election, obviously, and if there's a special election, that has to be on its own day. So there's 5 or 6 elections over the course of a year. That is by design. That is not an accident. It is harder it's harder for challengers to challenge incumbents when there's a system like that in place. So basically, the way it works is the harder it is for lots of people to be involved in the political process, the easier it is for the people who are in power to keep their seats of power. And so it's in their interest not to open it up more democratically. I think we are going to see some changes. There's been a lot of changes in the state legislature this past year as well, and I know there's pretty great, right? Yeah. No more IDC. So there's going to be a lot of I think there'll be changes in the voting electoral system in New York in the coming years. But that was super eye-opening for me as a New Yorker for 20 years to learn all about that. Is there anything for you?
Yeah, no, I just think, the political machines in New York are fascinating. They go all the way back to the 19th century. Tammany Hall, you can see the Queen's machine as this direct descendant, with people sort of passing the torch over the generations from those old days of crooked machines. So it's really exciting that we witnessed the end of that. We literally witnessed the end of that. But
earlier drafts of the film had old 19th century political cartoons in them. So.
Yeah.
Well, you just said that, the old guard sticks together. And what I found doing a little research about the film is how much of a community these women have. And that, and Alexandria actually went and was campaigning with Cori Bush down in Missouri, which is very heartwarming. And so it's, we saw in the film, of course, I'm sure you had more footage other places, but we saw one text, that they call each other, but were there can you talk about some of the other instances of them supporting each other?
Yeah, they supported each other throughout the process. They and the other several dozen candidates that were running on the slate with them. So they, they had, as you saw in the film, that there was the candidate meeting and training in Kentucky, and there were events like that every so often that they would go to. There was that meeting in D.C. where they took the photos on the steps, and that was where many of them met for the first time. I think we have footage of Corey and Amy meeting for the first time there, and of course Alexandria and Paula met at the Netroots conference, which you also see in the film. And so, but they were also in touch on. They had regular video calls. Brand New Congress and Justice Democrats organized them to have, regular support calls with one another, just to share stories of what they were confronting in their races, both personally and the particular logistical and political challenges they were facing, and they'd share, tips with one another, and as well as supportive messages with each other. Social media was a big way that they supported each other. It was very much part of the process.
Corey's decided to run again, yeah?
That's right. Corey is already running again in 2020.
She announced it at our Sundance premiere, actually.
Yeah. So it was awesome when Alexandria. So the Missouri primary was actually after the New York primary last year. The magic of cinema, we moved it earlier. It worked better for the story that way, unfortunately. So that scene where Alexandria did go to support her, it didn't wind up working for the film, but it was a wonderful moment of solidarity.
So speaking of social media, people have said one of the reasons why we have the president we have now is that he managed to master social media. And so has she. And she gives lessons to the congressman, right? Can you talk about how technology has been an equalizer and has helped level the field?
Oh, that's so interesting. Do you want to talk about that?
Sure.
You're on social media more than I am.
Well, I think Rachel and I are both like a little bit dumbfounded and baffled by her social media power. And I think we're like both like a little bit weirded out by it too, because we're not so comfortable in that world ourselves. It's amazing to see what she can do with it. I find the world of Twitter and Instagram kind of like a unhappy place to hang out, but she goes in there and she somehow draws energy from it and gives energy to it, and I think it's incredible to watch. I'd love to just see where it leads.
Yeah, I think it is a great equalizer. I mean, it gives it's an opportunity for communities for people to come together and build a public sphere that doesn't exist elsewhere. It's an opportunity for people to voice concerns that might not be getting covered by the mainstream media. There's all kinds of ways that it broadens, the possibility of political discourse and participation. But I think there's also a danger in social media in the way that everything gets often, I think it tends to reduce emotion and thought to love and hate. And so
sound bites.
And really, really short content. And so, there's a place for that, but we do long form documentaries, and there's, even though when you're editing and you've got all this hundreds of hours of footage, 90 minutes feels very short, or 86 in this case. But we really are looking forward to putting this film out into, we've got a world here where the star of the film is an internet celebrity now, and most people know her or think they know her from social media, love her or hate her. That's where a lot of folks are engaging with her. This is a much more nuanced, long-form picture of who she is as a person and what her campaign was all about and the movement that she's part of. And so I think that, we hope it's a valuable contribution to that dialogue.
I also would just add to that I think the real gift that Alexandria brought to using social media for a campaign is she translated into real people on the ground in her district, knocking on doors. She was able to build a following in virtual space and then bring them into rooms, get them to commit. And it was really amazing to watch that happening.
Yeah, and there was a really strategic approach to that she had as well. And, that is what her background as a community organizer brought to the process. And instead of, when you don't have hundreds of thousands of dollars to spend on TV ads, you've got to figure out another way. But it was actually very strategic. So, many of her constituents and the people she was engaging probably weren't watching television anyway. They're on their phones on the train between jobs. So many people do engage with media through social media instead of through the mainstream avenues that established political candidates might use typically for that. So it's not only an alternative to that, but it's a very strategic way to engage populations that don't necessarily get engaged by those traditional methods of political advertising.
Taking questions from the audience, Rachel was asked if being her own cinematographer helped her gain a greater intimacy.
Yeah, well, thank you for asking that. I hope so. I think so. That's what we were going for. That's definitely, it certainly helped fitting into a lot of those small spaces, New York apartments, cars, so hotel bathrooms. So there's, that was a huge part of the style, the way a film is shot and the dynamics of what that relationship is like between the filmmaker and the person being filmed. I think that that does show up on screen, and so to get that really gritty, intimate sense of what their personal experience was like, I felt that it was very important to have small crews, and it was also a budgetary constraint. We didn't have the funding to hire large crews, but there literally wouldn't have been a way to get a larger crew into a lot of those spaces as well. So you got to be mobile. You have to be flexible. These campaigns are changing plans at the last minute constantly. You got to be able to jump in a car here and then follow someone around into this building and out the other door, and it's just a constant rehashing of the plan that gets more difficult to do the larger your crew is. So that being a small crew afforded that flexibility at all levels.
It's also great the technology on the production end has allowed for more women DPs because the cameras are smaller and women
Not
can
this
carry
one.
the cameras.
It's a beast. It's a Sony FS7 is actually one of the larger, heavier cameras. Anyway, it's great. I love it.
Another audience question: when did they know that Alexandria would be the film's star? Here's Robin.
Well, I think we were fortunate in that because we're based in the New York area, we had more of Alexandria's story already. So while we weren't sure, we had no idea if any of them would win and which one might win, if maybe more than one would win. But when we found out that she had won, we knew she was going to be getting a little more screen time. That was clear. But we also knew that the story wouldn't work with just her. It was so important to be able to show not only the geographic diversity and all the other things that these characters, these other subjects brought, but just to give a sense of how hard it really is, and not. I think it could have verged into a sort of fairy tale territory without the other three women to give it the grounding of the real hard reality that not everyone wins, and that the machines and the establishment are actually very, very powerful. So that was really important to us. But it did take a lot of work to figure out the right balance and how to make sure everyone was included in a way that really worked for us.
From the audience, Rachel was asked if she has advice for running a grassroots campaign similar to those in the film.
Well, I think that the advice that that these folks would give, that the women in the film would give, is that you really have to reach deep inside yourself, going back to every hardship that you've ever gotten past in your life, everything you've ever lost, everything you've ever fought for. to draw that strength. It's almost a spiritual quest for them. That's how they've all described it in one way or another that way, and to draw those connections, not just between the strength you need to get through the types of struggles that we all have, and then you need to draw on that to get through a campaign, which is really difficult. But to make the connections between your personal experience and your story and the political issues that drive you, because that's what's going to really help you connect with voters. And that's what each of these candidates was able to do in their campaigns, and that's why they were able to change the conversation and engage people who don't usually participate in the political process.
I want to thank director Rachel Lears and editor Robin Blotnick. Their new film, Knock Down the House, is available on Netflix. You can find their previous documentary, The Hand That Feeds, on iTunes, Amazon, and other platforms. Thanks to Doc NYC senior programmer Karen McMullen for hosting the conversation. If you're in New York City, please join us in person for Pure Nonfiction at IFC Center. Each Tuesday, we show a documentary, followed by a conversation with the filmmakers or other special guests. Our spring season runs through the end of May. You can find more information on our website. Thanks to our team, series producer Hannah Nordenswan, and web designer Cross Strategy. Our theme music is composed by Andre Williams, who passed away in March at age 82. Our executive producer is Rafaela Nehausen. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook at Pure Nonfiction. I'm Tom Powers. You can follow me on Twitter at THOM Powers. Pure Nonfiction is distributed by the TIFF Podcast Network. You can read our show notes, learn about live events, and sign up for our newsletter at purenonfiction.net.